Welcome to the Get Fit Guys, quick and dirty tips to get moving and shape up. My name is Brock Armstrong and I am the Get Fit Guy. In this episode of Undercover Fit Guy, I dig out my fake nose and my fake mustache to check out the spin class that's known as SoulCycle. My goal this time is to find out what SoulCycle is, how it works, and what aspect of it I should review. And that's what I'm going to do right away. But first, change can be hard. I mean, you want to do something like run a marathon or get a promotion at work or maybe win a Nobel Prize. Whatever it is, it can be a lot to take on. But there is a new podcast from Macmillan that can help, and it's called Better at Everything. And season 1 is hosted by Peter Ludwig and Adela Scheicher, who are the authors of The End of Procrastination. They use research from over 100 scientific studies, and they'll teach you why defeating procrastination will help you develop a sense of purpose and to live a happier life. So listen to Better at Everything wherever you listen to podcasts. That's Better at Everything. All right, before I dive into my whole review of SoulCycle, let's start with this idea. In the same way that I've pointed out in my previous articles about Body Pump, Orange Theory Fitness, CrossFit, and Pure Barre, if you're trying to meet all of your body's movement needs with one brand name alone, well, you run into the same basic problem. One exercise class cannot meet all of our human biological needs for movement. Our biology is meant to move on every level, every plane, every direction, with and without a load, and over and across varying terrain and multiple textures. Although every single one of the brands that I just named claims to be a full body workout, well, it's simply not true. Every one of them fails. And you know what? It's not their fault. This is a losing battle. So, is the answer to simply spend a fortune attending every single gym on a rotating schedule? Or is the answer to adopt a lifestyle that incorporates enough incidental movement on a day-to-day basis that these workouts become, well, more like the chocolate coating on the protein bar than the protein bar itself? Well, I think you know where I'm going with this. Now, with that said, let's dive into my experience with SoulCycle. I try hard not to be a person who yucks someone else's yum, especially when it comes to workouts. Partly because I don't want to be a jerk, I mean, who does? But mostly because I believe that anything that gets an otherwise sedentary body up and moving can't be an entirely bad thing. But I'm also an avid cyclist for recreation and for locomotion purposes, so the idea of cycling indoors, well, it better involve a velodrome or at least a virtual world where I can race against my friends and maybe some professionals. For those reasons, I have, thus far, into my 40-some years on this planet, avoided spin classes. But last night, that all changed at my local SoulCycle location. Now, SoulCycle is a 45-minute indoor cycling class that features high-intensity cardio, muscle sculpting strength training, and rhythm-based choreography. Now, their website goes on and on from there, but you know what? I know better than to base my judgment on the marketing jargon of a website, so let's skip the rest. It was easy to sign up for the class, and luckily I have a location within walking distance or cycling distance of my home, which was nice. So I signed up on a Sunday and was ready to rock on a Monday. I packed some shorts, some socks, a singlet, and a towel in my backpack and arrived the mandatory 15 minutes before class so I could sign the waivers, find lockers, rent some shoes because they have proprietary clips on their shoes, of course, and I got changed. I was ushered into a dark room with already pumping music and was pretty much left to my own devices from there on. I knew that I'd been assigned to bike number 30, and I have to admit that it took me a minute or two to figure out where the numbers were on the bike. I sort of stumbled around blindly. I would have asked somebody, but the music was actually too loud already to bother. So, yeah, not off to a great start, but I was determined to keep an open mind. So, I suppressed my middle-aged harumph and started the class. For now, let's fast forward to after the class. As I walked home, I mulled over again and again exactly which aspects of the class I would focus on in this podcast. And after sleeping on it, this is what I came up with. Number 1, how effective is SoulCycle at being a full body workout? Well, okay, let me set the stage. Your feet are literally, not figuratively or metaphorically, clipped into pedals. Your bum is on or right above a seat, and your hands are in one of 3 slightly different positions on the handlebars. So, need I say more? This is the equivalent of trying to get a full body workout while you're wearing a straitjacket. This is not a problem if SoulCycle were aiming to give you a cycling workout, but trying to claim that this is full body, well, that is a problem. So it is the promise more than the delivery that I take issue with. And sure, we stopped pedaling for a few minutes and lifted some comically tiny weights over our heads, but the fact remains that we were still in a seated position, feet attached to pedals while we bicep curled and overhead pressed away with the 3 or 8 pound dumbbells. And the second point that I want to cover is how much does SoulCycle cost? Well, I paid $31.50, and that doesn't include a $2 shoe rental fee, which they generously waived for me since it was my first class. So yeah, $31.50 instead of just heading outdoors to ride my bike to the grocery store or to my office or just around the park. I may be biased here. I have always been an avid cyclist, but think of it this way. The bicycle itself was invented for one reason only: locomotion. It was not invented to be a piece of exercise equipment. And if it were, the designers would have been fired. Just because you can get your heart rate up by riding a bike doesn't mean that it is the ultimate in fitness gear. That is simply not the purpose of this tool. And that brings me to my third point that I wanted to cover, and that is how hot and sweaty is SoulCycle. Now, I'm making a leap here, but I'm guessing that this was done intentionally and meant to give us the impression of a very hard workout. Now, people who follow this podcast may already know that I am what you would call a heavy sweater. But when you put anyone in a small, poorly ventilated room with a bunch of people riding bikes headed to nowhere, well, everyone is going to sweat heavily, regardless of how much or little you twist the tension or resistance knob on your bike. The SoulCycle website claims their workout will give you high-intensity cardio, muscle sculpting strength training, and rhythm-based choreography. Now, I've already mentioned the embarrassingly tiny weights, and I'll get to the choreography later, but for now, let's talk cardio. A cardiovascular workout may sound fancy and impressive, but cardiovascular exercise is simply a movement or series of movements that raise your heart rate. That is it. So yes, you can get a cardio workout by running up the stairs, chasing your child or pet, shoveling the snow off your driveway, or dancing around your living room. In SoulCycle class, the factors that determine whether you're getting a high, medium, or low intensity cardio workout is how far and how often you turn the tension knob up or down on your bike. But you know what? Given the temperature in the room and the lack of airflow, we all ended the class looking like someone who had the tension on their bike set to kill. In fact, someone at the back of the room dropped one of their weights at one point during the cool down portion of the workout, and I was immediately ready to jump off my bike and administer CPR to the poor collapsed soul on bike number 14. Luckily, that wasn't the case. Now next, I want to talk about how SoulCycle classes are taught. But before I do that, I want to tell you about the other sponsor for today's podcast, Care Of. Care Of is a monthly subscription service that delivers personalized vitamin and supplement packs right to your door. Just take their fun online quiz to get a list of vitamins and supplements that are right for you. Then, your vitamins will get delivered right to your door in personalized daily packs, easy to take with you on the go. They even offer supplement options for vegans and vegetarians that match your dietary needs, and you can modify your order at any time. Personally, I like the idea of taking vitamins, but what I don't like is standing at the end of a grocery store aisle trying to guess what bottle of vitamins makes sense for me to take. Care of makes that much different. They actually help you find the vitamins and supplements that are best for your lifestyle. So you're not just taking a whole bunch of vitamins that you don't need and you're just going to eliminate. With Care of, looking after your health is a collaborative process, and it's kind of fun too. And you can get 25% off your first month of personalized Care of vitamins by visiting takecareof.com and then enter the code FIT. That's takecareof.com and enter FIT for 25% off your first month of personalized Care of vitamins. Okay, let's get back to how SoulCycle classes are taught. The website says that SoulCycle has magnetic instructors who support us, coach us, and push us to reach our personal bests. I could actually try to comment on this, but honestly, over the pumping music, I could only make out about a quarter of what our instructor was shouting at us, and most of what I did hear seemed, nonsensical and perhaps best summed up on an inspirational Pinterest page. It was so loud and dark in the room that there was no way I could even ask for help or instructions. At one point, the only light in the room was actually provided by the exit signs. The SoulCycle website boasts that the classes feel a lot like a dance party. It's dark, it's loud, sweaty, and fun. But due to this dance atmosphere, instead of partying, my eyes were glued to the instructor, watching intensely while attempting to mimic her choreography. At the points in the class when the leader left the bike platform to adjust the lights or the music, I was completely SOL. So I guess SoulCycle apparently doesn't hold instruction or knowing what you're doing and why in high regard. In my class, which actually had 4 beginners, including myself, it was clear that if you can't keep up or indeed figure out how to execute the move safely, you're on your own. Which brings me to my 5th point that I wanted to cover, and that is how well do SoulCycle bikes fit? As a cyclist, I've actually spent a lot of time and money ensuring that my bike setup is correct for the geometry of my particular body. Let's face it, cycling is one of the least natural things that we can do with our bodies. There is not a single part of our biology that says, sit on the seat, bend forward at the waist, crane your neck up, hold onto the stick, and move your legs in a circle to propel yourself forward at high velocity. So it behooves us cyclists to make sure that we do the least amount of biomechanical damage to ourselves as possible when we do engage in this bizarre ritual. Now, SoulCycle's bikes were apparently designed by Valency Design Group, who also designed the Peloton brand bike. Word has it that they reinvented the stationary wheel by fussing with 3 elements. And the first element they fussed with is a greater distance between the handlebar and the seat. Now, apparently they did this to allow the rider to work their upper body and core while they pedal. Now, remember when I said that I had spent a lot of time and money making sure that my bike fit my body properly? SoulCycle just tossed that out the window so you could do some weird fake push-ups and some weird fake crunches while you spin. Now, the second element that Valency Design Group fussed with is they hand sanded the joints with an extra tight seal to help prevent corrosion caused by sweat. That's just a fancy way of saying that if you sweat on this, it's not going to wreck the bike right away. Now, I, for one, am pleased with this innovation because, I certainly did my best to corrode bike number 30 in SoulCycle's Yaletown location. And the third thing that the Valency Design Group reinvented on this stationary bike is they added some robustness to withstand a ton of rider movement. Now, SoulCycle has what it calls signature choreography, and this puts a lot of strain on the bike frame. And despite the fact that their frames are 10 to 30% heavier than a standard bike, I still nearly flipped mine over several times during the class. So this is another tweak that I am happy that they included. And this also brings me to what I actually decided that I really wanted to address in this article. Seeing as I am a cyclist, Why would I get on a bike if it wasn't going to improve my biking skills? So, with that in mind, I bring you, Will SoulCycle Make You a Better Cyclist? First, here is a quote from legendary coach Troy Jacobson, who's a leader in multi-sport endurance coaching since way back in 1992. And he says, "Every time you go out for a bike ride, think of good form. Focus on fluid pedaling action with a relaxed upper body and a flat back. Allow your knees to track naturally over the pedal spindle and not splay out." Well, you can forget all that when you attend a SoulCycle class. Bouncing, twisting, and bending are mandatory, and keeping your still upper body, as you're usually encouraged to aim for when cycling, is simply not allowed in SoulCycle, especially when you're doing their version of crunches, which are really just small twists of the shoulder. I mean, let's be honest here. And then there are what SoulCycle calls tapbacks. Tapbacks are kind of like a bum dip, where you rather ballistically tap your butt back onto the seat by doing an awkward pelvic thrust and then quickly launch yourself back up into a standing position. Not only is this not a helpful maneuver for cycling fitness, but it is also a risky move, biomechanically speaking. The sudden deceleration that is required for your poor back muscles is something I'm sure that has left more than a few souls get it? Lamenting after their SoulCycle classes. Now, if you have ever borrowed a friend's bike and didn't know that it was a fixie or a fixed gear bike, you will know this feeling all too well. The first time you attempt to stop pedaling and just coast for a bit, as you can on a bike with gears, you are immediately launched headlong over the handlebars by the relentlessly spinning pedals. It's not fun, and it's potentially painful, and no one at SoulCycle explained to us how on earth we were supposed to do this safely. Now, as Jennifer Sage, the founder of the Indoor Cycling Association, stated in her article about SoulCycle, there is zero benefit from doing tapbacks. They are potentially harmful to joints and the musculature of the back, and they aren't much fun for the female anatomy either. While we're at it, let's talk about the push-ups that we did while we, get this, are sitting upright on a bike. Now, because you are a good Get Fit Guy follower, you know that to make a muscle stronger, you must have some amount of force for that muscle to work against. When you're doing a push-up, the force you're working against is your body weight and gravity. Well, this simply doesn't work when you're sitting or even standing on a bike. This move does, however, compromise the amount of power, or watts, as we cyclists call it, that you can create with your bike. Now, power output, or the amount of watts that you generate, is measured by how hard you are working, which in the end determines how good of a workout you are getting. If you are there to burn calories, I'll put it this way. If your power drops, your caloric expenditure also drops. Now, I know this podcast is getting a little long, so quickly and oversimplifiedly, the equation for power is P equals FV, or power is equal to force times velocity. When you're riding a bike, velocity is your cadence, or how fast you're pedaling. And force is the resistance you are pushing against, or how much resistance you've applied by turning the knob on your SoulCycle bike. So when those really fast songs come on, it does not matter how well your sweaty legs are keeping up with the beat. If the resistance isn't high, then the power will be low. Okay, I know I'm not painting a very pretty picture here, and again, I don't intend to yuck anyone's yum. But unlike the majority of the Undercover Fit Guy podcasts that I've done in the past, I would not recommend SoulCycle, not even as a component of your fitness regimen, and I would double that if you're a serious cyclist. In the end, it isn't difficult or complicated to raise your heart rate and to occasionally lift something heavy or to challenge your muscles. So why would we ever pay such a large amount of money to do it in a hot, loud room without even having the benefit of an instructor who can hear you, help you, and at very least keep you safe? Was my class fun? Well, sure. Did I get sweaty? You bet. Am I sore today? Yes, but not in the ways that I had hoped, and lower back, I'm looking at you. Despite how friendly the staff was and how nice the facility was, I will not be back. And it's not only because of my crazy belief that a bike is not a piece of exercise equipment, but instead a means of getting me places. Get Fit Guy is written, narrated, and produced by me, Brock Armstrong, with quick pedaling and editorial support from Joe Muscolino. If you enjoy this podcast, please consider leaving a review over at Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcasts, and you can join in the conversation at facebook.com/getfitguy or twitter.com/getfitguy, or look for me at brockarmstrong.com. Now, what are you waiting for? Get out there and ride a real bike.